crinoline, and the stereoscope. The stereoscope appeared, as you know, in Great Britain in 1851. This is the first time people saw a stereoscope during the Great Exhibition in 1851, but it took some time before it became popular. There is a myth according to which Queen Victoria visited the exhibition, stopped at the stand of the French optician Jules Dubosc and saw the stereoscope, said, "Oh my God, this is amazing," and the stereoscope became popular overnight. Well, this is just a myth invented by the inventor of the stereoscope, the side-by-side stereoscope, David Brewster. Is the only person who mentions the fact, and so we know it's a legend. It took five years for the stereoscope to become popular, and in those 5 years, the first person to actually use the stereoscope was Antoine Claudet, a famous French photographer who was operating in London. And by 1854, the London Stereoscopic Company had been founded, and they were the ones who promoted the stereoscope all over Britain, France, and later exported their photos to the States. So what's the connection? Well, 1856 is the year of the first catalogue by the the London Stereoscopic Society, and they advertised 10,000 groups and scenes. 2 years later, they had 100,000 groups and scenes, and 1 year later, they had 1 million groups and scenes in their catalogue. And in France, it was about the same. The Godin brothers, who were the biggest publishers of stereos in France, also had millions of stereos in their catalogue. And stereo, as you can see here, was the first mass-produced type of photographs in the world. Lots of people didn't know anything about photography until they saw stereos. Photography had been around since 1839 in France and in Britain, but by 1856 very few people had actually seen photographs, and for the first time they could buy cheap photographs of nearly everything. And it became a popular pastime in the middle classes to have stereoscopes on the table and a stack of cards, and they would spend evening looking at stereoscopes and looking at stereo cards, just like you did the other day when the power was out. So actually that's a very nice experience you had, because this is exactly what people did. There was no electricity, they couldn't watch television or send emails or texts, so they would sit around the table and look at stereos and comment on them and laugh about them, or tell stories about trips they had made in Italy or France or wherever. And it was evening entertainment. That's actually the title of this card by James Eliot, Evening Entertainment. Now, the stereoscope has always been associated with two words, education and entertainment. So this is the entertainment part, here, family around the table looking at stereos. But the stereoscope was also used in schools, had a very important educational purpose. And it also served to illustrate fashion plates. This is an original fashion plate from 1858. There was a French magazine called le Stereoscope Journal des Modes, and it was all about fashion, and they had these fashion plates in stereos. And when you read the press in the 1850s, you could also see that some people who sold clothes sent stereos to their customers so that they could choose the right dress or the right costume or the right suit, not online, of course, but from a photograph, a stereo photograph. Now, about 30 years separate these two women, the woman on the left and the woman on the right. So what happened between these 30 years to make the dress grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So we are in 1830, about 1830 on the left, and we are in 1860 on the right. So what happened? Well, women started wearing petticoats. One petticoat, and then two petticoats, and then another layer of petticoats, and there came a time when they were wearing 6, 8, and sometimes 14 petticoats, one on top of the other. So Phyllis, as you have seen, at about 5 or 6, it was very heavy, very hot, very uncomfortable. So they decided that it was time to stop that. Women couldn't move their legs, they could hardly move with such a weight. And so somebody invented the crinoline petticoats, and the first ones were actually made of rubber. They were inflatable petticoats, which was a very good idea. But rubber at the time was not very sturdy, and what happened was that since the petticoat was not sold with a repair kit, when the ladies sat down, sometimes, well, it made a very rude noise, and the lady would suddenly deflate, and she had to leave the room in a hurry. The advantage was that when she wanted to travel, she could keep the petticoat deflated, but she needed somebody, a father, a lover, whatever, whoever, to inflate the petticoat before she got to her destination. So she would travel with a deflated petticoat, go out, have the petticoat inflated, and then she could go into the drawing room, the ballroom, whatever. So this didn't last very long because of all the accidents that happened, and ladies couldn't bear that. Here is a picture from 1857 by John Leach in Punch magazine, or Punch almanac actually, showing a maid on the left blowing the rubber petticoats and the lady getting ready to wear it. And as you can see, there are several people helping her. It was impossible for women to dress themselves in those days. And then in 1856, a French woman, Angélique Millet, invented the steel petticoat, which was called the independent carcass. It was also called, after a while, the skeleton petticoat, and you can understand why. So this is the original patent from 1856, showing this petticoat. So it was a revolution in fashion because for the first time in years, women could actually remember they had legs, and they could move their legs. And it was, they accepted the petticoat with gratitude, and the fashion spread very quickly. So this is what a woman would look like when she was walking in the street, and this is the statuette, and it shows what was underneath. So this is the front side, and this is the other side of the statuette. You can see all the layers, but you can see here that she had plenty of room to move her legs, and women love that. So crinoline became very popular. I must say that the word crinoline is a bit misleading, because crinoline originally designated a fabric which was a mixture of cotton or linen and horsehair. Crin in French is horsehair, so it made the fabric a bit stiffer. So for years women wore crinoline petticoats, and then crinoline was the name given to the hooped petticoat, the steel petticoat. So it's a bit confusing at times. So here we're using crinoline in the second meaning, that is the hooped petticoat, the steel one. People soon made fun of the fashion. So this is a lady going to the blacksmith to have a dress fixed. So blacksmiths were soon seen as dressmakers and repairing skirts for ladies when they had a problem. Because of course steel springs, the steel spring that we use for the petticoat sometimes broke and they had to be repaired. Oh, sorry. Here is another view. Yeah, that's the back view of this ferry. Yeah. And photographers took a fancy to a stereo, to the petticoat, to the crinoline. The stereoscope was described at the beginning as showing the full roundness of life. And of course, with crinoline being so round, it was very well adapted to show this fashion. And this is a series of cards from 1857, the first popular actually series. In December 1857, there were 3 cards competing for public attention. One was Crocodile on the Banks of the Nile by Francis Firth. The other set was The Ghost in the Stereoscope. And the third set was Mysteries of Crinoline, and this is one of the pictures here. So there were lots of advertisements in the press and lots of photos showing what men were not supposed to see at the time, ladies getting dressed. So here is another photo from the set. Well, you can see the size of the petticoat, and you can see why this young lady has to be helped to get into it. So here she is now standing with a petticoat, an under petticoat or a slip actually, then the crinoline, and then she would start wearing other petticoats. On the floor on the right, you can see an inflatable petticoat which has been discarded.